Welcome back to the review of 4th edition products. Today is the Dungeon Master Guide. Now, this originally was super useful. It contained a lot of the core elements of being a Dungeon Master. Um, I skimmed through a lot of it because I had played previous editions. And its sections on how to DM. I've read 2nd edition books backwards and forwards for. So I didn't really get a lot from this personally, but I did read through it eventually and found that it had a lot of helpful information. They're not as detailed as some other books, like 2nd editions, what was it, Creative Campaigning, Catacombs, and what was the other one? Creative Campaigning and Campaign Sourcebook. Those were really helpful. So, but those were, source books designed for that sole purpose, which this wasn't. This was designed to go over a lot of the system, the core product, parts like that. So, it was fairly helpful about how to deal with a lot of things, how to make the new encounters, how to, all the new jargon for it. And it's a fairly good book. Ultimately, though, it, like a lot of its other first release brethren, except the Player's Handbook, became outdated partially, by a later release called the Rules Compendium, which is just this overarching, lovely book that contains every one of the system rules for the game, which is lovely. But we'll review that another day. But something that I don't like about this book is the trap system. There's very few traps, and there doesn't really seem, and from what I've read, there doesn't seem to be very good guidelines for how to make them, at least rules for them. So that bothered me a good bit, actually, because I'm not a big fan of traps. I personally find them kind of cheap. It's a cheap death that you fail one roll, you could easily just walk into something that'll annihilate you. I find them cheap, but every now and then I do like to have something, not, something to add to the battlefield, something to add to the dungeon. Not necessarily you miss this, you die kind of thing, but you miss this, you might not be as well off later on. So I was kind of annoyed by the very few that they had here, but it ultimately, they weren't terrible there just wasn't any guidelines for making new ones. Goes into how to build adventures, and honestly, there's not really much to say about this as compared to the other things, because it really, I find DMGs to be, they're not so useful for me anymore. They're not so useful at a certain point. 4E made it really nice and easy, the experience charts, and so you no longer need that from the 3.5 one. They got rid of prestige classes and moved them to PHBs, and so that once again removed another use for the DMG, and they removed the magic items from it, which removed the last thing. So all you're really left with how to DM. And at a certain point, you do not need this book anymore. Just straight up. You will need it only for the hard and fast obscure rules, which you can really replace with another book. The treasures replaced later campaign. If you can pick it up for cheap, get it. But honestly, this is going to be a short video because I can't really think of much to go into this. Actually, no, there's a couple things I will go into just to prolong this video a little bit. There are artifacts, special items, intelligent item beings, and how those work, which was really new. It's a new system, and I like it. Goes into a bit about languages, customizing monsters. That is something that they don't have later on. The other books do not have rules for how to build monsters, and at a certain point, you're going to need to build your own, or you're going to want to build your own. So the rules are alright for it. Once again, they're kind of limited, as they couldn't really fit a whole bunch. It goes into random encounters. It has a couple sample adventures, and they're very, very short, more like sample encounter type things. And then it goes into a little bit about the world that the Points of Light campaign setting that 4E is now built in, which I'm not a fan of, but that's because I'm not a fan of any of the, pre-made settings. I prefer my own world. That way I can regulate, first of all, what's in there. Secondly, I can regulate the flow of information to my players. So there's no chance of them picking up a book or going online or hearing a story from a friend about whatever. I prefer my own world, which has taken me a very, very long time, almost 2 years now. But I'm getting close to completion, map included, and details for all the nations for it. So I'm happy about that. But I'm just not a big fan of using settings. But that honestly, it's got the battle map thing that the 351 had at the back too. That pretty much sums it up for my review of the DMG. I know it was really short, but the book's not very long, and the best way to learn how to be a DM is to actually do it instead of read a book. You can read 1,000 books on how to DM. That does not make you a good DM. So ultimately, I'd say if you can pick up the DMG for cheap, get it. If you can't and you still want to DM, don't worry about it. Just, spend $20 to get the rules compendium, which will help you a lot. And, just look through a DMG at a store or at your friend's house. I mean, there's really no point to throw down what is the list price for this? $35. That's ridiculous. It's not worth it. Not even when it first came out was it worth it. So, well, then it was actually. So, until next time, have a good one. By the way, next week's book is going to be on the Player's Handbook 2. So, until next time, have a good one.